For almost a year, I thought my wife was staying late to help sick children. Then I found 12 expense reports. Every one of them listed the same donor meeting, the same bar, the same table, the same man. My name is Oliver Grant. I'm 44 years old, and I work as a financial controller for a regional construction company in Richmond, Virginia. People hear that title and assume I spend my life looking at spreadsheets. That is partly true. But what I actually do is look for the story behind the numbers. A report can say a project is on budget while money disappears through a dozen small expenses. An invoice can look ordinary until you notice it was submitted on the same day at the same amount by 3 different vendors. Numbers rarely lie on their own. People tell them where to stand. My wife, Madeleine, was 41. She had worked for the Willow Bridge Children's Fund for 6 years, first as a volunteer coordinator and later as director of community events. The foundation supported pediatric therapy programs, family counseling services, and small grants for children whose medical situations had turned ordinary life upside down. It was good work, important work, and Madeleine was very good at it. She knew every donor by name. She remembered the stories behind every family the foundation had helped. She could stand in front of a crowded ballroom, speak for 3 minutes, and make people reach for their checkbooks without making them feel manipulated. I was proud of her. I told everyone I was proud of her. At neighborhood dinners, at family holidays, at my office Christmas party, people would ask what Madeleine did, and I would say, she runs events for a children's foundation. She works harder than anyone I know. For a long time, I believed that completely. We had been married for 13 years, no children of our own. Not because we had never wanted them. We had tried for a while, quietly, then stopped discussing it with other people when every question started to feel like a small public wound. Eventually, we built another kind of life. A brick townhouse near the Fan District. A rescue dog named Winston. Sunday breakfasts at a diner where the waitress knew Madeleine's order. A downstairs room filled with charity boxes, banners, tablecloths, auction forms, and framed photographs of events she had spent months planning. The foundation was woven into our marriage. That was what made it easy for her to hide inside it. Every month, Madeleine had a fundraising meeting, usually on the second Thursday. Sometimes it was a sponsor dinner. Sometimes it was a planning session. Sometimes it was a relationship-building conversation, which was the kind of phrase people use when the meeting itself matters less than being seen at it. She would leave home around 6. She would wear business clothes, usually a dark dress or a blazer, and take the small leather notebook where she kept donor names and event plans. Then she would return around 10, sometimes later. She always came home tired, not drunk, not careless, just tired. She would drop her purse by the kitchen counter, take off her shoes, and say something like, "I swear, if I have to explain another sponsorship tier to someone who thinks a silent auction runs itself, I'm going to move to a cabin and never speak again." I would laugh. Then I would heat up dinner for her. That is the detail I return to. Not the lie, the reheated dinner. Because betrayal is not always a dramatic moment. Sometimes it is a person accepting your care while knowing exactly where they have been. The first sign came in March. I was helping Madeleine prepare documents for the foundation's annual gala. The gala was their largest event of the year. Nearly 400 people attended. There was a dinner, a live auction, speeches, music, and enough floral arrangements to make the hotel ballroom look like a garden had been moved indoors. Madeleine had asked if I would review a draft sponsorship summary. "Just check the numbers," she said. "You're better at catching mistakes than I am." I told her I would. The foundation did not let me access private donor accounts, nor should it have. But Madeleine had a folder of internal event materials at home. Venue quotes, catering estimates, sponsorship outlines, mileage reimbursement forms, and meeting summaries. I sat at our dining room table on a Sunday afternoon, reading through them while she took Winston for a walk. At first, everything looked normal. Catering deposits, printing costs, guest list estimates, volunteer meal reimbursements. Then I noticed a line item, the Lantern Room, Donor Cultivation Meeting. The amount was $186.40. It was not suspicious by itself. The Lantern Room was a cocktail bar downtown. Quiet, expensive, popular with attorneys, real estate developers, and people who wanted to feel as if they were having an important conversation without having to raise their voices. I knew it because Madeleine had mentioned it before. "They let us sit for hours without rushing us," she once said. The report said the meeting included 2 prospective donors. I continued reading. The next month's report had the same location, same description. The Lantern Room, donor cultivation meeting. Then May, June, July, August. Every second Thursday. Every report listed a donor meeting. Every meeting took place at the Lantern Room, and every meeting cost almost exactly the same amount. Enough for 2 dinners, 2 drinks, and a tip. Not enough for a donor meeting involving several people. I told myself there could be an explanation. Maybe the same donor preferred that bar. Maybe the foundation's reporting system used a standard category. Maybe Madeleine had simply chosen a familiar location. Then I found the attendance summaries. The meetings were meant to include one specific prospective sponsor. Westbridge Development Group. Their representative was named Connor Hale. I knew Connor, not well, but well enough. He was 46, vice president of Westbridge Development, and a regular presence at foundation events. He had donated auction items, sponsored a children's art program, and spoken at 2 past galas about building stronger communities. He was also married. His wife, Laura Hale, served on the foundation's Volunteer Advisory Council. She was kind, organized, and the kind of person who made everyone else feel useful. At last year's gala, she had spent half the evening helping an elderly donor find a quiet place to sit because the ballroom music was too loud. I remembered that now. I remembered how Madeleine had hugged her goodbye. I remembered how Laura had told me, "Your wife is the reason this foundation runs." The report in my hand said that Madeleine and Connor had met that month to discuss a potential sponsorship increase. But the sponsorship amount had not changed. There was no follow-up proposal, no donation agreement, no meeting notes beyond a sentence that said, "Continued relationship building. Donor remains interested in future involvement." In my work, vague language is rarely harmless. It is often what people use when precision would reveal too much. I did not confront Madeleine that day. I did something I had spent 20 years teaching project managers to do. I looked for a pattern. The next Thursday, Madeleine told me she had a donor meeting. She wore a black dress and a gray coat. She kissed me goodbye at the front door. "Don't wait up," she said. "Connor is difficult when he starts talking about numbers." I watched her drive away. Then I waited 15 minutes. I am not proud of what I did next. But there are moments when the truth becomes visible only because you stop accepting the version of reality someone has handed you. I drove downtown. The Lantern Room was on the 2nd floor of an old brick building above a bookstore. The windows faced a narrow street lined with parked cars and wet pavement. I parked across the road. At 6:42, Madeleine walked inside. At 6:47, Connor Hale entered through the same door. They did not arrive together. They did not need to. At 7:05, the waitress seated them at a small corner table near the window, the same table I had seen in the expense reports. Table 14. I could see them through the glass. Connor leaned toward her. Madeleine smiled at something he said. Then he reached across the table and took her hand. Not briefly, not by accident. The kind of touch that requires no explanation because it has already been explained many times before. I sat in my car until 9:48. I did not take photographs through the window. I did not go inside. I did not confront them. I watched the 2 people who had used a children's charity as a structure around their affair stand up, leave separately, and walk in opposite directions. Then I drove home. Winston was waiting near the door. The house was quiet. I made tea I did not drink. And I sat at the kitchen table until Madeleine returned. She came in at 10:31. She looked tired. Perfectly, carefully tired. "How did it go?" I asked. She took off her coat. "Long," she said. "Connor's company is considering a bigger role next year, but nothing is decided." "Did Laura know you were meeting him?" Madeleine looked at me. Her face changed, but only slightly. "Why would Laura need to know?" "No reason," I said. She picked up Winston, who had walked over to her carrying a toy in his mouth. Then she kissed the top of his head. "Can we not do this tonight?" she asked. "I'm exhausted." "Of course," I said. That was the first lie I told her. I slept in the guest room. The next morning, Madeleine asked if something was wrong. I said I had a headache. Technically, that was true. Over the next 2 weeks, I gathered only information I had a legitimate reason to see. The foundation's public annual reports, the gala planning schedule, the sponsor list, the event reimbursement documents Madeleine had brought home for review, the shared household calendar, and the records of a joint credit card that Madeleine had sometimes used for meals before seeking reimbursement. The charity funds had not been stolen. That mattered. The expenses were real meals. The reimbursement amounts matched the receipts. The foundation had not been charged for hotel rooms, gifts, vacations, or anything that would put children's programs at risk. But the reports were still false. They claimed donor meetings that were not donor meetings. They used a legitimate sponsor relationship to explain private dinners. They created an official trail around something that had no right to exist in that organization's name. I also found something else. Connor had used his company's charitable sponsorship budget to cover planning consultations connected to the gala. The descriptions were vague, but the dates matched Madeleine's monthly meetings. The money had not gone directly into either of their pockets. That was not the point. The records created a respectable reason for them to keep seeing each other. They had turned good work into camouflage. A week later, Madeleine asked me to speak at the annual gala. We were eating dinner when she brought it up. "I know it's a lot," she said, "but the board thinks it would be meaningful if you introduced the Family Support Initiative." "Why me?" "Because you've helped with the budgets, you understand the work, and people like you." I put my fork down. "What exactly would you want me to say?" Madeleine smiled. "Just tell them why the foundation matters. Thank the volunteers, thank the sponsors, make it personal." I looked at her. She had no idea what I knew. No idea that I had spent the previous week reading reports that described her affair as donor cultivation. No idea that I had watched her hold Connor's hand in the same place those reports claimed they were discussing charity. "I'd be honored," I said. The gala was held at the Jefferson Hotel in late October. The ballroom was full by 7. There were candles on every table. A jazz trio played near the entrance. Volunteers wore name badges and moved quietly between tables, checking auction sheets and making sure donors had everything they needed. Madeleine looked beautiful. She wore a dark green dress and a gold bracelet I had given her for our 10th anniversary. For 1 second, standing near the ballroom entrance, I felt the old instinct to protect her, to walk beside her, to admire the work she had done. Love does not leave all at once. Sometimes it stays in the room after trust has already gone. Connor arrived with Laura. He wore a tuxedo. Laura wore a navy dress and greeted Madeleine with a warm embrace. Madeleine smiled and returned it. I watched them from across the ballroom. Then I looked at the large banner behind the stage. Willow Bridge Children's Fund, building hope together. The words made me feel sick. Not because the foundation was dishonest. The foundation had helped people. The volunteers were real. The children whose stories would be shared that evening were real. That was why I could not let the truth become a spectacle. Too many innocent people had worked too hard for this room to become the stage for a marriage collapsing. At 8:40, the board chair introduced me. The applause was polite at first, then warmer as I walked toward the podium. Madeleine stood near the side of the stage. Connor sat beside Laura at a sponsor table near the front. I placed my note cards on the podium. I had written 2 versions of the speech. One was safe, the other was true. I looked out at the room, at the volunteers, at the teachers, at the families who had been helped, at Laura Hale. Then I began. "Good evening." The room quieted. "Before anything else, I want to thank the people who make this foundation possible." I thanked the volunteers, the teachers, the medical staff, the donors who gave quietly and never asked for recognition. I spoke about the families who had received therapy support, transportation help, and counseling during the most difficult periods of their lives. As I spoke, I saw Madeleine relax. She thought I was giving the speech she had expected. Then I turned the page. There is another reason I agreed to speak tonight. The room became still. Organizations like this depend on trust, not only the trust of donors, but the trust of families, volunteers, employees, and everyone who believes that the work being done is exactly what it claims to be. Connor looked up. Madeleine's face changed. I continued. Over the past few weeks, I have become aware of concerns involving the reporting and classification of certain fundraising-related meetings. There was a murmur in the room. I kept my voice calm. I want to be clear. I am not making accusations tonight. I am not naming individuals, and I will not allow personal matters to distract from the children this organization serves. But I cannot continue to serve as a public face for the foundation while those concerns remain unresolved. Madeleine stood frozen near the stage. Connor's face had gone pale. Laura looked from him to Madeleine, then back toward me. I took a breath. I have asked the board to arrange an independent review of selected event reports and sponsor-related expense classifications. The purpose is simple: to protect this organization, its donors, and the families who depend on it. No one applauded. They should not have. This was not a moment for applause. It was a moment for the truth to enter the room without tearing it apart. I looked at the board chair. Then I looked at the volunteers. Good work deserves clean hands around it, I said. And that is all I will say tonight. Then I stepped away from the podium. The board chair took over. He thanked me in a voice that sounded less certain than it had 10 minutes earlier. The auction resumed. The jazz trio began playing again. But no one was listening to the music. Madeleine found me near the service hallway behind the ballroom. Her face was white. "What did you do?" she whispered. I told the truth without using anyone's name. "You humiliated me. I protected the foundation. You could have talked to me." I looked at her. "I gave you months of chances to tell the truth. Every time you came home from the lantern room, you chose another lie." Her eyes widened. "You followed me. I watched you once," I said. The reports told me the rest. Madeleine covered her mouth. For a few seconds we stood in silence. The service hallway smelled like coffee and polished silverware. Somewhere behind the kitchen doors, dishes were being stacked. The gala continued 10 feet away, full of people who did not yet know why the room felt different. Then Madeleine said, "Connor told me he was unhappy." I almost answered immediately, but I stopped, because the sentence did not deserve the attention it was asking for. "Laura is unhappy now too," I said, and she had no idea why. Madeleine began to cry. "I didn't plan for this." "No," I said, "you planned every meeting. You just didn't plan for the reports to be read." She looked at me as if I had become someone unfamiliar. Maybe I had. Not cruel, not loud, just no longer willing to help her turn dishonesty into something that sounded reasonable. The audit began 2 weeks later. The foundation board hired an outside accounting firm. They found no theft of charity funds. That mattered to me more than I can explain. The money raised for children stayed where it belonged. Programs continued. Families continued receiving help. But the review found that several meetings had been improperly classified and that sponsor-related budgets had been used to create misleading documentation for private meetings. Connor resigned from his company position before the review was complete. Westbridge Development withdrew from future sponsorship arrangements. The board accepted Madeleine's resignation. They did not announce every detail publicly. They simply stated that leadership changes had been made following a review of administrative practices. That was enough. Laura left Connor. I did not speak to her after the gala. I wanted to. I wanted to apologize for the way the truth reached her. But I had already learned that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is not force someone to manage your guilt while they are trying to survive their own pain. Madeleine moved into a small apartment in the West End. She asked me several times whether we could try counseling. At first, I said no. Then, months later, I agreed to one session. Not to save the marriage, to say the things that needed to be said in a room where neither of us could walk away halfway through the sentence. She told me she had felt invisible. She told me Connor made her feel admired. She told me the foundation had become an easy excuse because everyone already expected her to be busy. I listened. Then I said, "You did not become invisible. You chose to hide." She cried. I did not say it to hurt her. I said it because it was true. The divorce was finalized the following summer. Winston stayed with me. Madeleine said it was fair because he was more attached to my routines, which was probably true. He liked his breakfast at exactly 6:30, his walks at exactly 7, and his afternoon nap on the same corner of the couch. In the end, the dog understood stability better than either of us had. The following year, Willowbridge held another gala. I did not attend. I received an invitation in the mail, along with a handwritten note from the new executive director. She thanked me for helping the board protect the organization when it mattered. I placed the invitation on my desk. For a while, I did not know what to do with it. Then I wrote a donation check, not a large one, but enough to support the family counseling program. I did it anonymously, because the foundation had never been the lie. The lie had only borrowed its name. That is something I understand now. Good things can survive the people who misuse them. A marriage can end without making every memory false. A charity can continue its work after the people in charge fail to honor it. And a person can lose the life he thought he had without losing the ability to choose what comes next. I never became the face of Willowbridge again, but I did become something more important to myself. A man who read the report. A man who saw the pattern. And a man who finally refused to let silence become part of the cover.
Blasting by morning coffee, dashboard hums with distant voices, breaths echo, tension in my jaw. Loose bills, keys tangle, side pockets worn thin, phone chirps with questions I might never answer. Sun cuts through tinted regrets, plans rerouted, fingerprints on last night's receipt. Old names flare in brief notification. We trade honesty for comfort, one laugh at a time. Counting all the reasons I keep moving. Borrowed peace burned behind plastic lenses. I frame each mistake with silence. My stride, stubborn glaze with intent. If you see me, let me pass. Truth ride, shotgun and doubt fills the trunk. Every glance a test, I'm just a story behind tinted glass. Rolling out no map, no warning, no warning. New codes, old habits, jacket heavy with memory. She leans in with eyes that see through stunts. We laugh too loud so her won't catch up. Promises undone by sunrise. Caffeine worship receipts for feeling spent. Empty benches and inside jokes. We keep moving before history gets too close. Eyes closed, engine whispers are there. Questions lie on the edge of tomorrow. Heard my own conviction in distant street noise. Sketches, routes the GPS can't find. Let the wheel spell out my secrets. Splinters of truth on passing signs. I'm searching for a reason that feels like skin. If you notice, don't look back. Windows down, new day waiting. Steps echoing fresh concrete. Nothing on, nothing left beyond. Just a distance and the will to begin.